Well, hello, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today's webinar is going to be on IEC 62443, an introduction to exida Cybersecurity Certification programs. As I said previously, my name is Ted Stewart. Let me get the slides working here. Thank you. I am the Program Development and Compliance Manager for exida. I have a little over 10 years of experience in safety, in manufacturing, and in lean process improvement. Little background information about myself: as I started my career with Lockheed Martin in missiles and fire control in Orlando, Florida. I then moved over to Melbourne, Florida, working with a sister company, another government contracting company called Harris Corporation, where I worked with a small niche group in wireless products. And we basically made little black boxes that could locate and track people. So I had a lot of different fun. And about 5 years, a little over 5 years, wow, time flies. I started working for exida and absolutely love it. Found my passion here. I'm now the help managing the OEM certification division. I'm the deputy quality manager and also the director of the CFSP program. We always like to have 2 or 3 quick slides here about exida because we always have new people on these webinars as they keep growing. We were founded in 1999 by several of the world's top reliability and safety experts around the world. We are a global consulting and certification firm. And each year it seems like we're growing in the sense that every year we're opening up a new office somewhere in the world. And just this year was India. So we now have an office in India. So we're very excited about that. But today's webinar, as you can see, yes, we do functional safety. Yes, we do alarm management. And wow, is cybersecurity growing. And so that's why you all are here today. We're going to learn about the different paths of certification and which one's right for you. But let me get through these quick intro slides and I'll dive right into it. And I've seen this slide. You know, I always talk to people, think for a moment. Yeah, I can read off, look, we do consulting, we do tools, we do product certification, training, reference material, and personnel certification. And we'll touch on a lot of those for cybersecurity for today's webinar. But think about it, you know, if you're in these areas, where can you get some help, some relief? Where are you spending most of your time and effort in trying to maybe do this yourself? Or would it be better if you had someone else come in for you? Or maybe, you know, what if, you know, without spending a lot of time, you could have someone do stuff for you as well. So that's kind of what I wanted to say is, look, there's so many different areas where you might not be that expert. It might be better to, hey, let me get some questions answered. Let me just ask a question to Ted, or, you know, and just get some even free consulting. Whatever it may be, we're here to help you. Any part of this industry, whether it's machinery, robotics, cybersecurity, alarm management, anything in functional safety. You know, I just challenge people, you know, ask a question, see if we can help you in any way. Because some people always try and do things themselves, which is fine. And that's why we have all the reference material out there. Because if you want to be that expert, you want to do it yourself, by all means, because we're an open book. We always there's books there, sorry, that was funny, but you know, we're always publishing as much stuff as we know because we want people to have this knowledge. We'd rather learn about all the new stuff and keep advancing in functional safety, in cybersecurity, and alarm management, because the faster our clientele or our customers can grow and can be more competent, the more stuff we can now focus on innovative items, right? As we progress in cybersecurity in these other areas, even in valves, right? We're now moving into looking at torque specs and recommendations there, and how does that impact with failures. And so there's so much stuff that goes on, and we're constantly learning and learning. And so as fast as we learn is as fast as we're publishing these books. So I think the latest book we have, it's in that top left-hand corner there on your screen. It's the Final Elements book by Chris O'Brien, Lauren Stewart, and Lindsay. You can see it up there. And then this year, fingers crossed, we're even working on trying to get a cybersecurity book out and published. So it's looking very good, very promising as well. All right. Well, let's get into this, right? So after a number of these cybersecurity attacks on these industrial control systems, ICS, most plant owners, operators, they're now starting to consider cybersecurity as a credible risk, right? So these attacks are becoming this credible risk, and some of the notable attacks received a lot of attention are the ones that we may or may not have known about. But I mean, come on, Stuxnet, right? The Indestroyer crash override attack, and then you have Triton. Yeah, and I can go into more details on each of those, but for today's webinar, really what we want to say that it's clear, right, that the ICS owners and the ICS operators, they must improve their cyber defenses if we want to even keep up in what has become like an arms race of sorts. Fortunately for us, we're learning, right? Every attack that happens, we're learning, because there's enough successful cyber attacks over the years that many attack patterns are becoming discovered. They're becoming documented. We're keeping track of that. And in fact, there's over 500 attack patterns right now that have been documented in the CAPEC. Now, the CAPEC, what that means, it stands for the Common Attack Pattern Enumeration and Classification. But just know that with each attack pattern, a defense against that attack, right, has been developed. And now fast forward today, these can now be found in your cybersecurity standards like IEC 62443. And I think that's the most important part of this, is that we're paying attention to these attacks. We're finding things to, if this ever happens again, we now have a solution, or we now have something that can prevent that from additional attacks. And I didn't mention this earlier, but if you do have a question, because I do have one that is coming through, go ahead. I'll get to it at the end, but go ahead and ask your questions throughout this presentation, and I will get to those answers. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, let's continue on here. So we find that most cybersecurity issues, they're going to fall into three major categories, right? The first one, control networks are full of what we would call soft targets. These are devices that are extremely vulnerable to disruption through their network interface. Now, the PCs in these plants, they're going to run for weeks. They'll run for months without any security updates, and some even operate without any antivirus tools. In addition to this, many of these controllers in these networks, they're designed in an era when, cybersecurity was not even a concern. So as a result of this, many of these devices can be disrupted by malformed network traffic. These things could even be hurt by high volumes of even correctly formed traffic. Now, here's the second thing. Many control networks have multiple pathways through which cybersecurity threats can enter this plant. These pathways often they bypass existing security measures in the plant, and some of them don't even appear on network diagrams. Now, how can that happen? Well, let's say you have a laptop computer. You can carry that in and out of the plant. Or what about a USB key, right? That can move from one PC to another. These can easily bring malware into that plant and rapidly spread from one system to another. Okay, now here's the third thing. Many networks are implemented as large, we'll call them flat networks, with no isolation at all between these unrelated subsystems. What's that mean? Well, this means that if a problem does occur in one plant or one part of the plant, it can spread very quickly to any unrelated subsystem and even to remote plant sites, right? So it doesn't even have to be in the general area. If you have a flat network, this now can be a wildfire of an attack, and it can just spread if you don't have any kind of protection there. Okay, so now you know that cyber threats are all around us. So now let's talk about, well, how do you ensure that you're protected? Well, how you ensure is one way is through cybersecurity or from certification, right? So certification is effective. It's completed by, well, it usually is completed by a third party against a set of requirements like the IEC 62443 standard, and usually certification is even going beyond that standard. And we'll talk about why it goes beyond that standard in the next few slides here. But today we're going to talk about the various parts of that certification and what's needed and what are the benefits, and how do you choose what certifying body you want to use, and how do you know if that body is even a good person to use for your business, and how do you get the most out of this certification, and then what are the paths for certification. So there's a lot to talk about. I'll kind of briefly go through these slides so I have more time at the end for questions. So why certify? What are the benefits? There are many benefits for an end user and the supplier, and I've listed just a few there on the slide in front of you. However, now that there is now if you looking for something for certification, what that does, it now gives you this structured, this auditable, this repeatable approach to evaluate the security of that IACS product and in the development practices of that manufacturer or even that integrator against this established benchmark, right? So now it creates this framework that puts everyone on the same playing field. So when you look into this and you want these types of benefits, now everybody's on the same playing field. They say, hey, if I'm a security level 1 or a security level 2, we all know what that means because there's now this standard, this benchmark to be put yourself against. Because right now, I mean, if you don't have anything, you say, oh yeah, I'm cybersecured. I have protection, I have antivirus software, but we really don't know what that means or how you can relate that to somebody else until you have something that can be apples to apples, right? So who does these cybersecurity certifications? Well, many companies, they're going to claim that, or they can claim that, look, I have all this cybersecurity knowledge, I have all this experience, I can do these certifications myself on my own system. And I agree that there are extremely smart people that are working on these systems, that develop their own systems. However, it's hard for me to agree when people want to self-declare something. Here's an example, right? It's something that I'm not passionate about, but it's something that, let me try and give a great example of like these self-declarations. It's whether, let's say you're trying to land a job, you're trying to impress someone on a date. People spend this staggering amount of time making claims about themselves. You see it all over social media, right? But here's the thing, though, it kind of makes sense. I mean, you're the only person on earth who has direct knowledge of every thought, feeling, and experience you've ever had. So now let's put this into a perspective of your company. If you were the one who designed the system or this product, who could possibly know it better than you, right? But your backstage access to your own mind and the development of this system or product sometimes makes you the last person that should be evaluating something. There's studies out there that have shown that without knowing it, you actually create these blind spots or you become biased subconsciously without realizing it. And it's true for even people of themselves. They start developing these ideas in their head, or I call it skimming, right? So when you think you have something perfect, you don't spend a lot of time because oh no, that part's already right. Let me look at this part where I think this might need some tweaking, right? And you just start overlooking things that you don't realize you're overlooking. And so that's what happens with self-declaration. So does this mean that, okay, fine, so maybe I shouldn't be self-declaring, declaration certifications, maybe I shouldn't be doing that, but can you use any third party? And no, you can't use any third party. You still that's not good enough. And in order to receive this value that people are looking for and this credibility, you need to use someone that has that high credibility, has that strong technical depth. And I put that in red bold on that slide in front of you because it's not just understanding the requirements. The key point is really you want to know that you need to have someone that understands why they even exist. And that's a key thing that people say, oh, no, I've read the standard. I know what the standard says. That's great. But interpreting it and knowing why it exists is a whole nother level. Okay, so we've gotten that point. And I'm going to try and speed through these so we can get to more of the fun stuff and the path of certification, but bear with me real quick so I can kind of build this up just a little bit here. So, okay, you want to find a trusted source, right? You want to find out if there's a body, find out if there's someone, a certifying body that maybe they're on these committees they're trying to achieve this certification from. Is the certifying body doing publications? Are they giving trainings? Are they giving web seminars? Are they accredited even to perform cybersecurity? Like a third party like ISCI, right, which is the American National Standards Institute. All we're trying to say is do your homework. Make sure you don't fall into that category that says, hey, look, they did a great job on my functional safety work, so they should be great in cybersecurity too. No, there's a whole nother rigmarole of standards and requirements that one needs to go through to even get accredited in cybersecurity or to become a creditable source. We did run across ISA. They recently wrote this great white paper. They did a really great job. It's called 9 Smart Questions to Ask When Evaluating Cybersecurity Certification Programs. If I remember, I'll even send out this white paper because it was a really interesting read. And yeah, and I'll let you guys be the judge of that one. So the reason why I stress that you should look for this accredited certification body because it keeps that certification body on their toes, right? It forces them to be audited once or twice a year. They have to be up to date with the latest information. They have to operate by ISO 17065. So that certification body who isn't accredited, it falls into that same trap that we spoke about earlier, where if they're not accredited, then really that certifying body is just self-declaring themselves. That's saying, hey, I'm a certifying body. I can do this. Yes, at exida, we have gone through this process, yes, for functional safety. However, we have also gone through it for cybersecurity. And so we're allowed to use that ANSI logo. We're allowed to go through and become this accredited company. And we're allowed to help people, like you see in that certificate in front of you, become and achieve these security levels. Now, one thing I haven't talked about, because one of the things that you should notice is I keep using ANSI, the American National Standards Institute. Well, ANSI is what? It's for America. But what about if you're located in the UK? What if you're located in Asia Pacific? Well, ANSI is also audited. Go figure, right? This onion just keeps unraveling. There's so many layers to this accreditation and becoming unbiased and becoming this this third party, right? So everyone has a third party. But really, we're going to stop at the global acceptance level, and that's the IAF. That's the International Forum Accreditation, or excuse me, the International Accreditation Forum. I said that backwards. And ANSI, so they obviously they get audited. So what that does now for everybody who wants this certificate is now they have this global acceptance, and due to the IAF, right? So if you have something that's ANSI with the logo on there, it has IAF on these certificates. Now you know that that certificate that you went through and got achieved by that certifying body is now a global certification mark, and you can see that on that certificate, IAF and ANSI. So that's just, you know, in any country you're in, like DAX, there's other accreditation bodies, but as long as they're a member of IAF, you're good to go. Okay. Let's get into some more fun stuff here. And if I speak fast, I do apologize. This will be recorded, so you can put me on half speed when it's on YouTube, and I'll probably sound normal. But when I start talking about these webinars, I get passionate, and because it means, you know, the stuff that we're dealing with it's new, it's exciting. There's so much going on, and we really want to get this information out to everybody. And when I get excited, yeah, I start talking fast. So I do apologize. I'll try and remind myself to slow down, because this is the stuff that is really going to start mattering here, because there's three main categories when you deal with cybersecurity. These categories depend on really what you're trying to achieve. And depending if you're an integrator, a manufacturer, or even an end user, your path is going to be different. The question is now, which one do you follow, right? So we try to put together this table, and this table can come off as maybe a little confusing, but believe me, this is way easier than some of the other ones we've seen. And the part with IEC 62443, how they developed this standard is they kind of put everything in one document. So really it's not one document, it's like 10 or 12 documents. And you got to pick and choose what part of the standards are applicable to you. I didn't say it'd be easy, but because, you know, there are a lot of different choices, but the main thing to point out is that you can see here, exida has their scheme, ISCI has a scheme. You can do both schemes, you can do one scheme. It doesn't really matter. Really, what you want to do is, if you want to take anything away from this slide, is know that there is cyber protection out there for you. We have you covered, and whether you want to certify your process, your device, or your system, you're good to go. There's a piece of that standard that's going to help you get there. And now what we'll do is we'll start going through the cyber security process. We'll go through the testing. We'll go through the features, and we'll kind of share with you what path you should follow if you're a type of person or company. Okay. Any cybersecurity certification scheme, you're going to use one or more of these three process steps. You're going to have an audit for that development process, which is going to be used to create that product. You'll have some type of performing some kind of security testing to find those vulnerabilities. And then you'll analyze and test those security features of the product to determine if they're actually sufficient. And so what I put there in bold is, look, security level equates a minimum set of security features or capabilities, as well as assurance for a secure development process and security testing, right? So that kind of summarizes those 3 line items. So now what I'd like to do is let's talk about each one of these 3 and when are they all needed? Hey, and is there ever a time that you don't need to do all 3 of them? So the first one was how do you want to audit the development process. Okay, so what is the development process? Well, here's the thing. In the longer run, and of course, this can't happen right away because cybersecurity wasn't even thought of a decade ago. I think a decade it was actually when it actually started. But in the longer run, we want people to design in their cybersecurity, right? So now all of a sudden, we want you to put these things and put them in your V model because this V model diagram, it's very classic. It's a classic software design process. It's been used before, been used for decades. Now, we want you to add security requirements like the security coding guidelines. And you'll see here, I did highlight or circle 2 of the more critical items, in my opinion, which are the security requirements and the security coding guidelines. Now, when we talk about cybersecurity device process for security, this has been around I think I did say that before, a little over 10 years or so. Microsoft originated this book. They were the first to think about cybersecurity. They put this security development lifecycle book together, and they did such a fantastic job. Now, fast forward today is where we are, and so much more has developed from there. And now cyber attacks are something more common than we would all like it to be. So how do we get around this? Well, how do we protect ourselves? And one of the ways is the second step in the certification process, which is testing. So what is testing? Well, there are different kinds of testing. You got fuzz testing, penetration testing, malformed packet testing, storm testing. You know, we have a long list of these tests that will run. We'll have special equipment to perform these tests, and then after we do it, we have the results. So currently, though, there are over probably, I say, a good 100 different types of tests that have to go through. However, what we're learning, and as you said, everything is going to progress. Everything will change in the long term, but right now we're still gathering data. And as we gather this data, what we're also realizing here at exida is that there's some tests that carry more weight than others, and testing may be able to become weighted in importance as long as those critical tests are passed and not all the tests have to be performed, right? So instead of taking a week to perform these 100 tests, maybe you can get testing done in 2 days. You can get through all the critical tests. Hey, I'm good to go. From the statistics that we've shown, you only need to do these various tests. Once you pass those, we can keep moving, right? So now all of a sudden the process becomes a little bit easier. But right now, we have to get through these types of tests. So a key thing you want to take away is that testing is one of those steps that may not be required for all who want to achieve certification, right? Because that one we just saw previously, if you want a cybersecurity device process certificate, it's a process certificate, right? So you don't need testing because you're only worried about certifying your process. And so that's one of the things that, look, testing is one of those things that might not be required if you don't need it. And that's why we say, look, let us know what you're looking for, and we'll let you know what you're applicable to and what you're not applicable to. And here's the third part of that certification process. They're called features, right? And features are important in the 62443 standard, and you can see that they're actually incremental. Now, what do I mean by incremental? I'm not saying, hey, so if you look at FR1 in that table, identification and authentication control, SL1 says 10, SL2 says 16, SL3 says 22, and SL4 says 24. Sure, as you go through each one, that number is increasingly going higher. However, when I say incremental, I mean, no, if you want SL2, you must do 10 requirements in SL1, and you must do an additional 16 in SL2. So really, you have 26 requirements in SL2. And when you get to SL4, you're looking at 20, 40, 50, about almost 70 requirements to get to SL4. So it's not just 24. And so you can see it really starts getting harder as you go through to these different security levels. And I'll be honest right now, because this was not thought of in the past, there's many people that are going to struggle to get through these different security levels. And so you see here, right here, ABB went out and they successfully got to security level 1, and they'll probably start working on security level 2. And it's very real out there, and there's a lot of stuff that we're getting through. But now that it's known, companies are now developing these systems around these features. Now let's talk about the different scheme types. So, one of the first schemes is a process certificate, and we saw that in an earlier slide, but there is even two different types of process certification. You have one for OEMs, and you have one for integrators. Now 4-1, when I say 4-1, I mean IEC 62443-4-1, right? Like I said, this 62443 standard is basically like 10 standards in one. You got to know which ones to use. So if you're looking for cybersecurity and process certification in your OEM, you're going to be using 4-1 as your requirement, your framework to get that certification. If you're an integrator, you're going to want to use 2-4, which is IEC 62443-2-4. Notice, for a process certification, like I said previously, is you only have to do step 1 of that certification process. You don't have to worry about testing, and you don't have to worry about features because it's not required in a process certification. Now, for a device cybersecurity certification, all 3 process steps must be met. Notice that now, not only do you have to do 4-1, you also need to do 4-2. So when you do a device like an OEM cybersecurity certification, you're going to have to meet the requirements of 4-1 and 4-2. And each one of these certifications have a set of features. And you can see here, this is a slightly different table. It looks similar, but it's a slightly different table of requirements or features that you're going to have to meet to get this certification. Okay, let's look at another scheme. The other one is OEM system certification. If you're an OEM who is looking to certify their system, what standards are you going to use? You're going to use IEC 62443-4-1, and you're also going to use -3-3. And if you're not really sure if this is for you, in these slides, and you can go back and look through them, but I kind of try to give some examples of who would be this OEM system certification. Well, things we'd be looking for are, operator stations, controllers, servers, networks, and network devices like routers or switches. So those are the types of things that would be certified under this scheme here, 4-1 and 3-3. Well, let's look at another one, okay? And this is for all you integrators out there. I think I saw a couple on the invite list here. This slide is going to be for you. It's for the integrated system certification. And notice the difference between the two. When you look at the OEM system certification and then you look at this one, right? So if I look at this one here, I look at 4-1 and I look at 3-3. Now, if you're an integrator, 4-1 goes away and you become 2-4 and 3-3. You're probably saying, Ted, there's all these numbers. Well, it's okay. We have cheat sheets. All you have to tell us is who you are, what you're trying to achieve. We can lay out the map. And even if you don't even use exida, at least we can give you a roadmap as to what to expect and which route to go. I think that's the least we can do for anyone because it is very complicated. It gets tiring to hear all these dashes. But at the end of the day, if we can help you out in any way, that's what we really want to do. So, like I said, getting back on track to integration system certification. What's interesting for the integrators is if you're able to justify, remember we talked about those 3 different process certification steps, right? Where you had the V diagram, the development process, you had testing, and you had the features. Well, here in that first bullet point you see that it says which may, is in bold, include fuzz testing, penetration testing, and storm testing. What that's saying is depending on how you have your system set up, you're an integrator, right? So sometimes integrators, every single system is different for each entire customer. So how do you do this testing for every single customer? Well, providing the justification, you may or may not need to do these different types of testing if you have another way to go. And that's something else that we can help provide guidance. So like exida's functional safety scheme, we've added some specific requirements that go beyond IEC 62443. Now, this is per our advisory board recommendations, and some of you say, yeah, go figure. But no, it's true. It's because like all standards, once they're released, the industry it's going to keep progressing. So those standards that come out like IEC 62443, and even some of those are even in draft, they're not even released, but it takes so long. But when they do become released, industry still changes. And when this industry changes, there's going to be some things that we still need to catch and we need to be accounted for. There's going to be different types of vulnerabilities that are going to come out that weren't thought of before. And here are a few that I've listed that we expect people to achieve when they want these types of certification. The first one is that the manufacturer must perform network robustness testing during development. We don't feel it's good enough for testing to be done after a product is already ready. Why? Because you can't do anything about it when it's ready. You have to redesign, and it just never works out. So we're requiring people to perform their network robustness testing during development. The second thing we're looking for is surveillance audits. There's some schemes that don't have surveillance audits. Now, I don't understand why we would not have a surveillance audit, and the advisory board felt the same way. And what they basically said is, look, every 3 years, not only do you have management change, but just think of how many cybersecurity changes there's going to be out there in 3 years. I mean, let alone every month we hear news stories of different things that are happening. But in 3 years, you're going to want to get reevaluated. You're going to want to make sure your system is, or your product, your device is still safe. And so we've definitely taken to liking on these surveillance audits to make sure that these companies are still how they should be. They're still protected, and there's nothing vulnerable that they didn't know about. Another thing that we added to the scheme is that equipment failure modes that impact security now must be evaluating during certification. Even in our certifications for functional safety, some of these projects were now, hey, if you have an Ethernet port, if you have some way to connect into the internet, we're now checking for possible cyber threats, right? You have a threat modeling that now goes on, it comes into play. And just like functional safety, there are security manuals now that need to be developed. And I believe it does talk about it in the standard. However, we want a little bit more information in those security manuals. We want the awareness, because the awareness is what's critical in a cybersecurity attack. If you put the information in there, you can help the people using your system, your product, your device, whatever it may be, and you can beef up these manuals. That's what's going to help them. The more they know, because the knowledge is the power. And of course, the last one we put on here is every certificate, every assessment that we'll do that's in good standing will be posted on the exida website. What this does, and what it's proven to do, is now you have something to go back on to show justification that, hey, I truly did get the certification. Because it's so surprisingly unfortunate how many forgeries we've even seen for our group, right? There's different places where they'll just create their own exida certificate and just say, oh yeah, we're exida certified. Interesting. So no, everything now is on there. You can double check everything. There's if a product is expired, you'll know it's expired. If it's fake, you'll know it's fake, because now we have this web. Well, we've always had the website, but that is one thing we added to the scheme, saying that way it will be public knowledge when that company does achieve whatever security level they achieve. And it doesn't really end there, because with cybersecurity certification, personnel play such a critical role in these certifications. And whether it's, hey, a training, and then you get a CSP, which is your cybersecurity practitioner, right? That's your certificate program that shows your competency. Or if you're looking to achieve and become that mentor, that leader in the industry, you can do the CACE program. And what's so neat is, as these things are progressing, no matter what standards you're dealing with, there's a different type of certification to show your expertise in that area. And yeah, we do have one for 62443 for cybersecurity. And what's neat is that there's an area that will match you. And there's even going to be, I just learned, there's going to be an integrator CACE, which is really nice. But if you're a facility IACS PC administrator, maybe ITOT is for you. If maybe you're a technology management engineer, the process exam might be best for you. So it's nice to know that, just like the certifications for functional safety for the CFSP, you can take it in process, hardware, software, so you can find something that's in your level of expertise and still become that expert. All right, so in summary, let's do some takeaways, right? So cybersecurity certification it's going to look like you're going to want to make sure that you have all three aspects, right? You want that security development process, you want security testing, and you want the security features and the capabilities. Keep in mind, because when we first started with cybersecurity, and many of you know this, what did we always go to? We went to test-only certifications, where we use a product called Achilles. So whether it was World Tech using this, or there was a program called ESTS. It's the same thing. But what that means is, if it's a test-only certificate, it does not mean you're cybersecurity certified, right? You're missing steps 1 and steps 3 that we talked about. So there's no development process was evaluated. No features or capabilities was evaluated. Only the testing was evaluated. So when we talk about it, people still get the impression that the test-only certificates are exactly what you need. No, but guess what? You did one of the 3 steps, so that is good. Now let's get you on the other 2 steps to make sure that you are compliant. And because this is such a new industry, or at least it's rapidly growing, it's not that new. But one of the most critical things that I think we're even taking advantage of is, we're not using these platforms like we should. And one thing that I know exida we're striving to do better is we want to make sure that we can get this free information, these free webinars, or whatever the content may be, out there faster. Cybersecurity almost seems like it's winning right now with all the attacks that are happening. So if we can get you the information as fast as we can and learn about all these new vulnerabilities, these papers that are being written, the faster that we can together help beat this. And that is one of our main messages here, is let's get the information out there. Let's help you, so we can become stronger, and we can become this trusted source at a whole faster pace. So I got some questions here. I'm gonna get them answered right here. The only thing I wanted to say here, besides this is just a snapshot of our trainings, is that there are online trainings now. I know everyone's been asking for them. We have them. You can see there for cybersecurity, even for the security software development, there's an online where they're like a couple half days to help out. I'll come back. Okay, questions are coming in. So why don't we go ahead? Let's get to these questions. I have my email there, so if I don't get to your question, or you don't like my response, just send me an email. And also, one thing I do want to let you guys know is that all the questions that have been asked in this morning session and then this session, I'll make sure I write down. I'll answer them in on a Word document or a PDF document, and I'll make sure I email everybody all the answers to these questions, because there were even some good questions from this morning. And then, oh yeah, that white paper. I'll see if I can't get you a white paper as well. All right, let's see here. All right, first question. Achilles testing. Oh, so they want to know, of all the 100 tests, are we able to get all the tests that you guys do for the Achilles testing? Well, the tests, I don't believe, are supposed to be proprietary information. It's just a series of tests. So really, my comment to you is, why don't you, I would personally go to the website, whether you want to go to World Tech or whether you want to just go to the Achilles product directly. I bet you can find a list of their tests right there on the site. That's usually what we would do. We have the software, of this tool, so we just basically, everything's stored in there to run all the tests and the reports. But even the reports that we generate have all the tests in there, and then how that person does. So simplest thing for you to do is just go to there's probably Achilles website, and you can get all the tests located there. So is IEC cybersecurity required by law, or is an industry best practice? I believe, and I can get this confirmed, it's an industry best practice. It's not by law. I don't know what usually I asked the HSE, right, in the UK, because they usually are the ones that get through the regulations faster. They usually have a few more hurdles to cross, and over in that area, where the US we're more of a best practices kind of thing, where we don't have as many regulations. But I do believe it's just industry best practices. However, I'm starting to see, even though it's not required by law, I see it becoming a very common trend where many people are looking into this because it's such a real threat. I will look into that, Jonathan, though, a little bit more, and give you an exact answer when I reply back. But good question, because I did not mention that at the beginning part of this webinar. I did not. Will you or the slides with us? Oh, if you'd like a copy of the slides, yes, you will get a copy of these slides that you can use. They will be emailed to you by our marketing team. Good question. Oh, another question here. Thank you for the webinar. Oh, it seems as though, if I read this right, that there's still some confusion on which path is best for them to go through the certification. What I can do is, you have my email right there in front of you. Why don't you just send me an email, and all I ask for is, tell me what's your goal, what are you trying to get looked at, and then I'll let you know, one, if this is something you should be considering for cybersecurity, and two, I can lay out a path for you as what standards would be applicable to your system, your product, or whatever it may be. And then, well, I mean, whether you use exida or not, that's okay. I just really want to make sure I can put together a roadmap for you to help you out, and then you can make your decision from there. That's no problem at all. Any other questions? Those were the only ones so far that received good questions. Another question: how should we determine which level of security should be achieved for the security level? For process safety, we have you have risk matrices and LOPAs and HAZOPs to determine that SIL level. Okay, simply put, it's kind of like what we do is it's kind of like a pragmatic approach. So we look to see how much security can you take on and how much do you want. And there's I think a 7 or 8 step, I believe it's a 7-step process. Sorry, I'm not expert at this yet. My other colleagues are, but I believe there's like a 7-step pragmatic approach that will determine what safety level you need depending on what answers you provide for the level of security that you're trying to achieve. And because this is something that people are doing after the fact, it's probably one of the best approaches because there's going to be such a huge level of impact to your current system that you haven't thought about with all the different ways that it can be breached. Whereas if you're having a brand new product and you're doing your development process up front, it's so much easier to achieve because you're thinking about all of these different cybersecurity aspects now. So it's really, and Jonathan, I'll go ahead and I'll put that again in this Word format where I'll actually put some links as to how we determine these security levels, but I'm pretty sure it's just the pragmatic approach where we ask the customer, they answer a series of questions to figure out what level of security they're trying to achieve, and based on those answers, we can determine what security level is best for them. I guess it's kind of like a cyber HAZOP in a sense, or a LOPA in a sense, where we're gonna look at your layers protection and see how protected do you want to be in that sense. Any other questions? Well, if I overlooked one, if I didn't see one, feel free to email me at tstewart@exida.com. If you want, that's my picture in the bottom left-hand corner if you want to find me on LinkedIn, and if that's easier for you, whichever works. But thank you so much. I appreciate everyone's time. That's it for now. I'll get all these questions out to everyone hopefully tomorrow, and then the slides and the recording will also follow. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time. Take care for now. Bye-bye.